Jumpin In on Manx Radio.
With Howard and Chris Kane.
Hello.
Good evening.
And welcome. Here we are again, can you believe? Saturday night, 9 o'clock on Manx Radio, jumping in the best in modern and contemporary jazz with Chris, myself, H, and with something of a fiery flavour this week.
Yes, welcome along to this week's show, and what a firecracker the show is, or as the saying goes, remember the 6th of November, drum power, bass groove and bop, or something like that. So what sparklers have you dug out this week, H?
Well, I'm digging into some black fire. I'm going to have a listen to some Chariots of Fire, and I might blow a few smoke rings.
And from me, well, we light the blue touched paper, retire to a safe distance, we light up the sky, dance around the embers, and if there's time, remember the month. But with the advent of silent firework displays, can you really believe they're real, or as the Michael Garrett Quartet say, just a trick of the light?
stood in the hallway where shadows scampered away as dawn devoured their faceless game. But as morning started over again, I knew I'd see a new plane, and I wondered, could it be true that while daylight dazzles my sight, do you wait for me here in the half-light? There you go again, chasing shadows. I live in your mind, so don't fly blind. I'm right behind, and wherever you may tread, you should know I'm there. Though it is thin as air, I follow everywhere, while the sun's at its depth or height. I'm lingering always here in the half-light.
And there it goes, off into the firelight. The wonderful Michael Garrick Quartet with orchestra. Well, it says orchestra, really much more like a 16-piece big band with Jackie Dankworth on vocals in that one, with a Trick of the Light or Grandma's Spells, taken from his 1997 release For the Love of Duke and Ronnie. Perhaps never quite receiving the recognition he deserved, he's always been a driving force on the British scene since the 60s, and as a key member and composer in the Rendell Carr Quintet, with compositions such as the fantastic Black Marigolds, which actually got me hooked on his writing, and countless works with poetry, choirs, big bands, and lots of time spent in education. Garrick sadly passed away at the age of 78 following heart surgery back in 2011. And as Steve Vose once said, the famous jazz writer, it's not pretentious to describe him as the British Duke Ellington.
Oh, totally, yeah. I think he was obsessed with Ellington, loved that sound. You could hear it at the end, the chording at the end there he put down, very Ellingtonian, that ding going at the end, just the sort of thing that Duke would have done finishing off a piece like that, I think. Sadly, we met him several times, and I did once have an opportunity years ago to interview him, and then it fell through for some reason. He could be a bit spiky at times, but I think he mellowed with age, and I know
he had a slight chip on his shoulder about not getting the recognition that he felt he wanted.
Yeah, but I remember we saw him at something, I think the Royal Northern College of Music, and he came up and had a chat, and he was actually really nice, and I regret now we didn't sort of do something then, but hindsight's a wonderful thing, as they say. These chaps are still around, I'm happy to say. The Bad Plus, they have changed their format a little bit, and Orrin Evans has now taken over the piano seat from Ethan Iverson. We're going back a few years to a great one. I haven't played this for a while, forgot how good it is. Suspicious Activity. And from that, we're going to stay with our fiery theme, some Chariots of Fire. The theme from the same. You might have recognised it. You might not. Certainly identifiable in the middle section at the very least. In any case, themes from the Chariots of Fire, as brought to you by the Bad Plus, or at least the first evocation of the Bad Plus, should we say, the original Bad Plus, with Ethan Iverson on the piano, Reed Anderson on the bass, Dave King. He's getting around quite a bit playing.
We never managed to get an interview with them either, despite
no,
trying.
Did ask them once. I mean, maybe it'll happen sometime. Ethan's, of course, moved on to do other things or whatever. Would be nice to speak them as a trio. I did see them one time in New York, in fact, at the club which is now gone, the Jazz Standard. But it wasn't really a time to do a piece. They were sort of on their way. They'd finished their gig and they were off. They did sign my CD for me.
They did.
But did everything else. Anyway, great stuff. I really enjoyed that one going back in the day. Must be one of the few CDs I've got where the entire notes on the inside of the CD sleeve is actually in cartoon form. It's a little story called The Office Gobblers, which, yeah. I don't think we've got time to go into that. A good one in case if you haven't checked that out. The Bad Plus, Suspicious Activity. Good one.
Fantastic stuff, yeah. Now, another British composer and pianist who, coincidentally, also passed away in 2011 was the powerhouse that was... Well, let's see if you can guess. He was a member of the Tubby Hayes group in the 60s. Then with his own trio with Jeff Klein and Tony Oxley, he toured with Phil Wood's European Rhythm Machine, recording some 10 albums with Woods. Then he was in Nucleus. He had a spell as Ronnie Scott's house pianist before moving to France and releasing a number of great albums on JMS with Henri Texier, Didier Lockwood and Alan Holdsworth. Have you guessed yet? Well, anyway, here he is in 1999 with his quartet and the aptly named Fireworks. Is it out? Are we safe to move close? Fireworks there from, did you guess who it was? It
Gordon Beck, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Gordon Beck Quartet.
Good
In
stuff.
fact, similar to the lineup we saw in Bracknell all those years ago, back in
We're just debating that. I remember
84,
that's the
can you believe?
Oh, wow, that is terrifying. It's the only time I ever remember seeing him. I just remember him playing. I can remember the gig. I remember Steve Arguelles on drums, and I don't know, it was Mick Hutton on bass, and that's about it.
In that case, it was with Gene Calderazzo at the drums, Stan Sultzman, who was also in the live set we saw on sax, Steve Watts on the bass, Gordon, of course, on the piano, and talking to our favourite listener from Luxembourg, who said he'd like to hear some Rhodes on the show. He was a master of both the acoustic and the Fender Rhodes, was Gordon Beck. And if you don't have any in your collection, jump in anywhere. Sunbird is as good as any place to start, I think, but you won't be disappointed.
I'd agree with that. You're listening to Jumpin' In here on Manx Radio with Chris and myself, H, the best in modern and contemporary jazz, of course, from around the globe. And this week, being themed on a fiery front, because it has been bonfire night, hasn't it? So it's all stuff linked in with fire, fiery themes, fiery names, whatever the case may be. How about some Blackfire, a classic from Andrew Hill? Joe Henderson on tenor, Andrew Hill on the piano, of course, Richard Davis bass, and still going, I think, Roy Haynes at the drums. Great stuff. One of the best debut albums, perhaps, of the 1960s on Blue Note. Andrew Hill's Black Fire. He'd played before, I think, on Joe Henderson, who's on tenor there on one of his albums, Point of Departure, I think, was it?
Yes.
Earlier on. Terrific stuff. Born in Haiti. I didn't realise that until I was reading the notes earlier on. Born in Port-au-Prince, or Port-au-Prince, as you prefer, Port-au-Prince, in Haiti in 1936. And his family moved to Chicago when he was 4. His parents said, so that we could starve a little better, which rather gives you an impression of how rough and tough the times were at the time. He was a fairly sickly child. He went to the University of Chicago Experimental School, started playing jazz at 13 with his own baby band, a trio which used to copy, he says, all the techniques then on display in Chicago on the air. He remembers copying Bud Powell, Thelonious Monk and Art Tatum solos verbatim. And he says these gurus, which one hears most in Hill's playing, but a lovely free feel about him as well. It's music which demands to be listened to, and it still sounds fresh and modern and different and sometimes vaguely shocking as well, even now. Terrific stuff.
Fantastic stuff indeed. And speaking of which, here's a saxophonist next from me that never disappoints and is always willing to try something different. And also, speaking of where we are in November, the London Jazz Festival is approaching very rapidly.
Fast approaching.
Next weekend, we will be going down and putting a nose in for a few days. We can't stay for the whole 10 days that it's on, but if you're in London, pop in and you'll find plenty to go at. This particular set, this album, was recorded because it was originally performed at the Wigmore Hall in 2014 as part of the festival. The suite, Sun and Sand, features original music by composer Patrick Zimmerly that pairs Joshua Redman's trio with bass player Scott Colley, fantastic in his own right, and powerhouse drummer Satoshi Takeyoshi with the contemporary string quartet Brooklyn Rider. Here's Flash. No doubt you'll all be whistling that in the bath later on this evening. That's fantastic stuff there. Flash, taken from the 2019 Joshua Redmond release, Sun and Sand. A fascinating fusion of jazz and classical with the Brooklyn Rider String Quartet.
Good stuff, really different. And yeah, it's sort of almost third stream, isn't it? It is almost sort of, definitely classically influenced with the strings there, and that sort of slight feeling of a classical nudge to it, but yeah, almost unclassifiable music, isn't it? Certainly not straight classic. Certainly you wouldn't call it straight jazz either. It's
still good music.
Third stream,
that's
yeah.
all that really matters.
Well, it's third stream, I suppose. It is that sort of wonderful blend of the two, and that's as effective as any I've heard of late. This is probably a little bit more straight ahead on that front. This is something I used to be able to do in the younger years. I haven't tried it for a few years now, but I'll see if I can get my pipe going and blow a few smoke rings. marvellous stuff. Do like that. Well, I like Ralph Peterson, full stop, really. Sadly left us, I think, last year, not that long ago. Not at a great age either, but he had a bit of a rough old life, I'm afraid. Managed to straighten himself out in the end after a bit of trouble with drink and drugs and all the usual problems. Anyway, that one, The Art of War, classic album. I don't know how many albums he's got out under his own name. Must be at least 8, 9, 10, maybe more. I certainly get half a dozen at least, I'm certain, and that's only touching it with his sort of... some of the sort of bigger band ones, and then he's got the, what did he call that? Not the Fotet, wasn't it?
Fotet,
With the Fotet, that's the word I was after. There he was anyway, leading from the drums as per. Jeremy Pelt on trumpet and flugelhorn. You don't never go wrong with a Jeremy Pelt album. Jimmy Green on tenor sax there on that particular one. Oren Evans, like I said, we were talking about now, plays with the Bad Plus, and Eric on piano and Eric Revis on bass. And they were with Smoke Rings.
And if that had you bopping around the baked potatoes and the parking, then we'll slow down a little bit with this solo piano album with a difference. Here's Aki Rissanen with the Bonfire Ballet.
Hi, this is Craig Taborn, and you're listening to Jumpin' In with H and Chris on Manx Radio.
bit of fire waltz. Can't beat a waltzing by the fire. Mal Waldron and co. Terrific stuff. Bit of 3/4, can't go wrong.
And before that, we heard Finnish pianist Aki Rissanen playing solo piano and accompanying himself on what is called the Omniverk, a unique Finnish acoustic instrument with 2 keyboards that plays one plucks strings like a Baroque keyboard lute and the other one mechanically bows the strings, giving quite an otherworldly quality to it. It came out this year on Edition, and thanks to them for sending us a copy of that. Well, that's about it for this explosive edition of Jumpin' In, but we've just time to leave you with Matthias, Ike and November. We'll see you next week, perhaps at the London Jazz Festival.
Yay!
Yes.
Let's just hope we get
everything crossed. Bye for now.
Take care.